Have you ever felt a quiet ache in your soul whispering that you were made for more than the daily grind? Meet Maya, a corporate lawyer who spent her nights poring over case files, convinced she'd never break free from the weight of expectations. One evening, as the city lights blurred outside her office window, she sensed a stirring in her heart, an ancient promise pulling her toward a destiny beyond her own ambition. Picture yourself beside Maya at that pivotal moment, your own doubts echoing in the hush of midnight corridors. What if every sleepless night and every almost there setback has been preparing you for a transformation so profound it will redefine everything you thought possible? There is a divine choreography at work, a sacred purpose woven into your story long before you ever realized it. A great shift draws near, one that will ignite a spark of hope in the darkest corners of your life and unveil gifts you never knew you had. If you're ready to step into this unfolding promise, type, "I'm ready," and let your journey begin. Now, let us move from this moment of awakening into the heart of our story. Before there were shores to wash with tides or mountains crowned with snow, there was a promise whispered across the vault of heaven. A promise that every realm of creation, from the dust beneath its feet to the breath that kindled its life, would reflect the glory of the Most High. Imagine a realm so radiant that light itself seemed hesitant to intrude, where hosts of angels stood sentinel before the throne, their song a perpetual echo of divine harmony. Could any beauty surpass that first dawn of eternity, when the voice of God resonated through endless halls of light and every winged form vibrated with purpose? In that realm the archangels reigned supreme, beings of such brilliance they were called the sons of God, entrusted with the stewardship of worlds and the delivery of sacred decree. Among them stood Michael, warrior of dawn, commander of heaven's armies. His countenance shone like smelted silver. His gaze carried a firmness forged in glory's kiln. He bore not merely the strength of battle but the weight of divine justice upon his shoulders. Could a creature fashioned from light ever stumble? Could the heart of a guardian ever stray from its charge? Then, as shadows seldom seen in paradise began to stir, a sound like a distant sigh slipped through heaven's gates. Something unseen had crossed the boundary that divided worlds. Genesis mentions in few words the moment that set all creation trembling. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took wives for themselves whomever they chose. Genesis 6 verse 2. Imagine that one glance, the beauty of mortality shimmering like dewdrops in dawn's first light, enough to unhinge the order of ages. Could the perils of desire reach even into the celestial courts? Down below, on the plains of Sumer and the valleys of Uar, women tended flocks and wove garments from wool's soft tangles. Each dawn they rose to bake bread, and each dusk they wove lullabies for their children. Their laughter echoed across fields of barley, their tears watered the roots of human sorrow and joy alike. Yet these simple lives, fashioned from dust and breath, carried a power the watchers above had never known. A power of vulnerability, of longing, of mortal beauty that glowed with the soft fire of fleeting life. When the watchers descended in secret assemblies beneath moonlit groves, the air quivered with forbidden promise. Under the canopy of olive and fig trees they whispered oaths sworn not to God but to one another, sealing their pact to defy the boundaries set at creation's dawn. Could such an alliance bear fruit without consequence? Their union with mortal women gave rise to giants, the Nephilim, heroes of old, men of renown. Genesis 6 verse 4. These towering beings walked the earth like living avalanches, their footsteps cracking stone, their voices roaring like thunder over parched plains. What becomes of a world when its guardians become tyrants in their own right? Heaven recoiled at the breach. The sacred halls fell silent as the host of heaven trembled in the wake of so profound a betrayal. Angels who had never tasted malice or sorrow now felt the cold ache of regret. What had begun as a fleeting fascination had erupted into cosmic rebellion, tainting both earth and sky with the stain of disobedience. Could paradise itself endure such a wound? Then the world cried out in blood and terror. The Nephilim ravaged villages, devoured herds, overturned altars, and mocked the very breath of life granted by the Most High. Humanity's lament became a thunderous roar, reaching even Michael's unwavering heart. He beheld the scene with mournful resolve, for the covenant that bound creation had been sundered by lust and lawlessness. It was with that burden lodged deep in his breast that Michael first turned his gaze upon the wives of the fallen watchers, the mortal women whose love had unleashed a fury no sword could quell. Their faces, once radiant with innocent delight, now bore the shadows of sorrow and shame. Could the hand that had embraced angels now be cleansed of its stain? The Creator's command rang clear across both realms. The angels who did not keep their own domain but left their proper abode, He has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Jude 1 verse 6. Yet what of the daughters of men who had bound their fate to the watcher's fall? In that moment history pivoted on a single act of divine mercy, or divine retribution. Michael would not only confront the rebels in the heavens but would bring justice to those earthbound hearts that had entangled themselves with cosmic sin. What he did next would mark the beginning of a hidden aftermath, a chapter unspoken in ordinary retellings of the flood narrative. Could the echo of that act still resound in the deep hidden places of myth, as whispers in storm-tossed seas or murmurings in the ruins of ancient temples? As the floodwaters rose to reclaim the earth, washing away the giants and the corruption they bore, a different reckoning waited in the wings. For when the ark settled upon the mountains of Ararat, leaving the world cleansed of its flood of violence, Michael's sword would descend not upon the Nephilim nor the rebel watchers alone but upon the wives who had given them life. What form would such divine justice take? Would mercy find them amid the solitude of the new world, or would judgment chase them into the shadows of memory? In the hush that followed the deluge, when earth exhaled in relief and the dove soared across empty skies, the true horror lay not in divine wrath but in the fearful knowledge that some wounds transcend even water's purifying flow. What boundaries remain sacred when desire has drowned them in blood and tears? Could those women, once cherished brides of the immortal, ever return to the domain of peace? The stage is set for the untold tragedy, an act so severe that angels dared not whisper of it again. As we prepare to unveil Archangel Michael's shocking judgment upon the wives of fallen angels, pause and listen for the silence that follows a storm. In that stillness you may hear the tremor of bones rising again, of ashes stirred by divine breath, and of a promise that even judgment cannot extinguish. Could grace reclaim what rebellion shattered? Or does the shadow of that hidden act linger still, a siren's call to every soul standing at the threshold of obedience and desire? Dawn's pale light glimmers on rain-slicked stones of a newly cleansed earth, as if creation itself is holding its breath after the fury of the flood. Imagine the harbors of ancient cities, now silent docks with skeletal piers, where once laughter and song rose with every returning tide. Could the wind carry both the scent of salt water and the echo of lives washed away? For the handful who emerged from Noah's ark, the world felt both promise and ruin, a blank canvas stained with memory's scars. Yet beneath the open sky, another reckoning awaited, one beyond the power of floodwaters to cleanse. In hidden groves and shadowed glades, the wives of the watchers lingered, their garments clinging with river silt, hearts heavy with regret. These were the women whose mortal beauty had first enchanted heaven's guardians, leading to a union forbidden, a love that birthed giants and plunged the world into chaos. Could the haunting of their own choices be heavier than drowning in the storm? As humanity strove to rebuild fields and altars and forge a fragile peace with God's renewed covenant, Archangel Michael stood upon a desolate hill. His soaring wings, once resplendent with victory over rebellion, now drooped under the weight of a new assignment, not merely to bind fallen angels, but to enact justice upon those who had welcomed them. Genesis tells of a promise made to Noah: "Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood." Genesis 9 verse 11. And yet this pledge did not cover every form of corruption. Michael's task would be one of severity, a judgment reserved for a debt that blood could not repay. Below him, the women knelt in small clusters, Noemi tending to the half-ruined vineyard, Samara gathering eggs beneath low stone walls, Aaliyah wandering among shattered pottery and fallen idols of the giants once their children. Their eyes, once bright with love's first flush, now brimmed with untold sorrow. What does it mean to survive when the world you helped destroy lies in ruins? Could life's breath itself feel like a curse? Michael's descent was as silent as starlight but carried the authority of heaven's throne. His sword, forged in celestial fire, glimmered with an edge honed by the sorrow of ages. As he approached, a hush fell over the women, as though creation paused to watch mercy and judgment entangle. Could any mortal heart withstand the gaze of such purity? He addressed them not with thunderous decree but with a voice like distant bells tolling for the lost. "Daughters of men," he intoned, "you embraced the watchers, forsaking your boundary for the allure of their light. Their seed brought giants who defiled the earth. Now the covenant stands. Life for life cannot stand where blood guilt stains the soil." Their trembling voices rose in confession, echoing the pattern of Eden's first fall. "We were deceived by beauty," they wept. "We surrendered to longing. Mercy, spare us." Yet the covenant was clear. Disobedience demanded reckoning. Could tears ever cleanse a sin born of heavenly union? Michael raised his sword, its blade reflecting the dawn's promise. Then, with a movement swift as mercy's final sigh, he did not strike them down. Instead, he pronounced a sentence woven of both justice and hope. "You shall no longer walk upon the earth in flesh alone. You shall live between realms, borne upon waters and winds, ever drawn to mortal shores but never fully home. Your voices will beckon, your beauty will enslave. Yet no embrace will grant rest, for your legacy is exile." At that word, transformation rippled through the women. Their feet melted into fins of silver and sapphire. Their hands became webbed and graceful as sea song. Their hair billowed like kelp forests under moonlit tides. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly luster. As mermaids, they rose upon waves, half human, half creature. Bridges between earth and sea, longing lodged in each hesitant heartbeat. Could there be a more poignant punishment than life stretched between two worlds belonging to neither? Their voices, once tender with love's murmur, now carried an eerie song at twilight, calling to fishermen's hearts with a mournful beauty. Some say the sirens of later myth were born of this decree, their haunting cries built from remorse and desire, guiding mariners to both wonder and doom. Michael watched as they drifted toward the horizon, forms weaving through kelp and reef. Each glance back was a question writ in sorrow: will mercy ever find us in our exile? Across the seas, on every shore, the faintest echo of their lament would ripple through time, a reminder that some boundaries once crossed bring a fate worse than death. And so the hidden aftermath of rebellion took shape not in fire or flood, but in an eternal tide of longing. Could these transformed daughters of Eve ever glimpse redemption? Could their lonesome song ever be answered by grace? As the sun touched the water's edge, the mermaids vanished into the deep, leaving only their voices, wind-borne and heart-piercing, as testament to Michael's shocking act and the enduring weight of choices made under heaven's gaze. What becomes of a soul caught between promise and exile? And in the hushed space between sea and sky, might we still hear their whispered plea for mercy amid the waves? The moon hangs low over restless seas, silvering restless waters that pulse like living veins beneath midnight skies. Imagine a lone sailor on the great expanse, mast creaking, salt spray cooling his brow, suddenly hearing a song so achingly beautiful it feels as if the sea itself were weeping. Could any human heart resist such melody, or would it draw them into depths from which no living breath returns? From antiquity onward, sailors have whispered of sirens whose voices rippled through mist, luring unwary vessels onto hidden reefs. Yet these legends pale beside the truth born in that first post-Diluvian dawn. The women once known as Noemi and Samara, Alia and her sisters, gliding beneath waves as mermaids, haunting echoes of Archangel Michael's decree. Their transformation did not merely punish, it encoded a warning into the very tide. Desire untethered from obedience bears consequences that ripple through generations. Across centuries these siren songs found voice in diverse tongues. Homer spoke of creatures half-bird, half-woman whose chant shattered oars and shattered hopes. Ovid wove tales of slender forms shimmering in moonlight, yet embodying sorrow deeper than the ocean's floor. In every myth, the motif recurs. Those who cross sacred boundaries are undone not by firestorm or flood, but by the relentless pull of longing unfulfilled. Could such stories carry secret fragments of a reality too unsettling for holy scrolls? In medieval chronicles, monks penned accounts of phantom women beckoning fishermen toward death. Their eyes glowed with unnatural light. Their laughter rippled like shattered crystal, beautiful, terrifying, utterly unearthly. On rocky coasts, empty boots washed ashore, still warm from vanished feet. Here, perhaps, the transformed wives of the Watchers remained under curse, caught forever between promise of love and burden of exile. Yet amid sorrow's refrain, a curious thread of hope weaves through prophecy. Ezekiel saw valleys of dry bones stirred by divine breath, proclaiming, "You shall live." Ezekiel 37 verses 5-6. Could the same breath that raises the dead also reclaim fallen daughters from their watery prisons? If bones can rise from dust, could souls long exiled in the abyss one day find resurrection's shore? Centuries passed, and the church fathers wrestled with these shadows. Augustine mused on Eve's legacy and Mary's hope, seeing in them two bookends of humanity's fate. He hinted that mermaid-like imagery spoke not only of judgment but of yearning for a world where every boundary dissolves in grace. Could Archangel Michael's act, though severe, also bear a prophetic gesture toward a time when exile ends and exile's heirs return home? Artisans in stained glass studios began to capture these whispers in light. In cathedral windows, a lone figure of a woman half-submerged arcs over waves, her gaze turned heavenward. Surrounding her, saints stand on solid ground, worshiping the Lamb who holds keys to death and Hades, Revelation 1 verse 18. In that tableau, the siren becomes both cautionary echo and testament to a deeper truth. No flood nor curse can override the redeeming current of divine love. By the Renaissance, poets penned sonnets to these fabled daughters, some pitying, some fearful. Shakespeare's Ophelia drifted in flowers, a pale echo of the mermaid's replaced grief. In romantic verse, mermaids symbolized the soul's longing for union beyond the confines of flesh and storm. Could these literary descendants carry the residue of that hidden judgment, their words rippling like waterborne tokens of a secret buried by time? Even in modern science fiction, deep-sea explorers recording inexplicable vocalizations, listeners detect patterns that defy natural origin. Audio spectrograms reveal harmonic overtones impossible for human chords. Could those be the distant laments of mermaid souls, singing across centuries in quest of mercy? Or merely distortions of sonar? The line between myth and memory blurs as we listen more closely to the ocean's voice. Yet for all the fascination, one truth remains piercingly clear. Archangel Michael's act was neither capricious cruelty nor cold indifference. It was a decree woven of both justice and prophecy, a message carved in flesh and water and bone. The mermaids, though cursed to roam, embody an eternal question. Can grace reach even the depths where sinners dwell? Could chains forged by divine wrath be loosed by divine mercy? And so we stand at the water's edge, waves lapping at our feet like whispers in a forgotten tongue. The moon's reflection shimmers across breakers, illuminating shapes that vanish at dawn. As you survey the tide, listen for a song that carries both warning and sorrow, longing and hope. Could you hear it in your own heart, calling you beyond the broken promises of desire toward a promise that never fails? In the hush between wave and wind, one image endures. The mermaid paused on a midnight rock, gaze lifted to the heavens, fins quivering beneath moonlight, caught between worlds. Could her silent question, "Will mercy find me?" also be ours? And in that question, might we glimpse the promise that began before borders, the promise of return, of renewal, of bones rising again in life never-ending? A pale dawn breaks over craggy cliffs, where waves hurl themselves against stone in thunderous applause. Imagine the spray illuminating drifting sea mist like spun silver, as gulls wheel overhead in mournful circles. Could any landscape mirror both the grandeur of creation and the weight of its wounds? Here, where land and sea collide, the mermaids linger, ghostly shapes traced against the cusp of light, their song a requiem for broken covenants. Since Michael's decree, these women have haunted every shore. Fishermen speak of nets torn by unseen hands, of bait vanishing into depths at the height of their lure. Coastal villages tremble at dusk when voices rise, half-remembered lullabies drifting across salt-lashed rooftops. Could those melodies conceal a plea for mercy, or are they siren calls arranging fresh tragedy? In every note lies both the beauty of human longing and the bitterness of divine judgment. Under the moon's inscrutable gaze, the mermaids slip among kelp forests, their bodies shimmering with bioluminescent glimmers, proof that even in exile life bends toward light. Yet each pulse of iridescence carries a flicker of sorrow too deep for tears. What does it feel like to wear beauty as both shield and shackle? Imagine flesh once human, now sculpted by curse, every glance a reminder of love's peril when it defies the Most High. Centuries passed, and as empires rose on nearby shores, scholars attempted to catalog sightings. Maps were drawn marking Siren's Bay, Whispering Coves, Heartsong Inlet. Mariners carried journals filled with trembling testimonials. I beheld her at starfall, hair like moonbeams, eyes fathomless as the deep. I followed her call until the keel split upon hidden shoals. Yet no chronicler dared assign names to these phantom daughters of Eve, their identities dissolved in myth, their humanity buried beneath layers of fear. Meanwhile, Michael's sword remained unsheathed in memory, a symbol of heaven's unwavering justice. He watched from the firmament over centuries, a sentinel against further incursions of rebellion. But prophecy foretold a time when even exile's heirs might find redemption. Ezekiel envisioned dry bones clothed with flesh and stirred by divine breath. Thus says the Lord God, I will open your graves, and bring you into the land of Israel. Ezekiel 37 verses 12 to 14. Could this promise extend across the veil of water, reaching even those bound to the sea? In whispered midrash, rabbis hinted that mercy follows judgment like dawn follows night. They spoke of a future day of the Lord, when every broken boundary would be restored, when death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning nor crying nor pain. Revelation 21 verse 4. Could such an age embrace the mermaids in its tide of mercy? Might those who once entangled angels also find themselves entangled in God's redeeming plan? Artisans centuries later immortalized these hopes in fresco and mosaic. In Roman catacombs, a lone figure emerges, a woman half submerged, arms lifted toward a crucified Savior whose outstretched hand beckons the lost. Her scales, rendered in ochre and lapis, seem to dissolve as she reaches skyward, a testament that even the deepest exile cannot extinguish the flame of grace. Imagine standing before that image, breath caught between pity and longing, heart stirred by promise. Today, deep-sea explorers occasionally record underwater harmonics that defy natural origin, songs with intervals too perfect for mere creatures of flesh and fin. Some researchers propose they are the remnants of ancient laments, carried through millennia and oceanic currents. Could those spectral tones be the echoes of Michael's judgment still yearning for redemption? Or merely the ocean's own voice, shaped by its ceaseless murmur? As modern shores hum with tourist chatter and coastal lights gleam at twilight, the old legends persist. Beachcombers whisper of half-buried combs of polished shell, of stranded rose-hued pearls too large for any known mollusk. Neighborhood children collect these treasures, unaware they might be relics of a curse, tokens of a hidden war between heaven and earth. What trace remains when divine justice intersects with human curiosity? In the hush before sunrise, the sea yields a final gift, the faintest echo of a lament. It drifts across sand and salt, brushing every soul with a question older than time. Can mercy reach even those who fell through heaven's gates? As the tide surrenders its secret shells and the gulls wheel toward roost, one image lingers, two hands reaching from opposing realms, fingertips almost touching above the foam. Could that near touch symbolize a promise that every exile might one day return? And so we stand at this liminal shore, tears mingling with salt on our cheeks, hearts poised between fear and hope. The mermaid's song fades into morning's hush, leaving only the echo of Michael's decree and the promise that even the deepest wounds may someday find a wave of mercy strong enough to carry them home. Twilight drapes itself across the horizon as coastal lanterns flicker to life, casting long shadows on cobblestone streets and glinting on harbor masts. Imagine the hush of a seaside town at evening, fishermen hauling nets heavy with silvery catch, children darting through alleys in the glow of oil lamps, and the faint susurrus of waves against wooden pilings. Could any scene feel more ordinary, more secure? Yet in that very stillness, the mermaids stir, a silent reminder that beneath calm waters lies a world still haunted by ancient judgment. Since Michael's decree, their song has woven itself into every culture's folklore. In the misty fjords of Scandinavia, sailors speak of the Havru whose lamentation echoes through glassy bays. In Celtic lore, the Selkies, seal women bound by mortal yearning, bear the silent scars of lives undone. Even Pacific Islanders tell of reef dwellers who slip ashore at dawn, weaving seaweed crowns in mourning. What is it about coastal twilight that turns every whisper of wind into a call from that hidden aftermath? Could these diverse traditions all trace back to the same celestial decree, the same metamorphosis of mortal wives into exile's heirs? Beneath the surface, archaeological sites reveal submerged settlements once ravaged by rising seas. Stone foundations lie half-buried in shimmering shallows off Greece and Turkey, the remains of temples where ivory idols once stood. Divers recover fragments of amphorae painted with siren motifs, tails arcing between waves, faces turned skyward in silent pleading. Could these shards be more than artistry? Might they be relics of a world scarred by heavenly rebellion, memorials to women caught between divine justice and human hope? In medieval Christianity, the mermaid's form became both cautionary emblem and redeemed symbol. Bestiaries described her as the sinner undone by beauty, a living testament to power misused. Yet stained glass windows in Gothic cathedrals show a softer image, a mermaid kneeling at Christ's feet, her scales falling away like so many tears, her hair woven into the hem of his garment. Here the artist whispers a deeper truth: no curse is final when met by the Lamb of God. Could grace, once applied, break even ocean-wrought chains of exile? Reformation sermons caution congregations: beware the call of distant shores where beauty masks the abyss. Yet pietists also spoke of the mermaid's conversion, her song turning from siren's lure to psalm of praise. The Dutch painter Hendrik Goltzius sketched a series called The Penitent Siren, where each frame reveals a sea maiden's journey from sorrow to sanctuary. Could the very form born of judgment become an icon of redemption, a living parable of God's pursuit of the lost? In the age of exploration, logbooks record encounters with mermaid sightings. Christopher Columbus noted women in the waves, while Captain Cook's crew sketched figures half woman, half fish, with astonishing detail. Naturalists dismissed these as manatee sightings, but sailors, whose bones rattled with storms and whose hearts beat with long voyages, trusted their senses. Could there be an element of truth woven into their tales, the echo of an epic-old transformation still vibrating in remote coves? Meanwhile, theologians meditate on Michael's role as both warrior and intercessor. Jude reminds us that the Lord, after he had delivered his people out of Egypt, destroyed those who did not believe, Jude 1 verse 5. A pattern of deliverance followed by judgment. Yet Revelation proclaims Michael's final victory, and there was war in heaven, and the great dragon was cast out, Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9. Could Michael's act against the wives of the Watchers foreshadow a greater reconciliation, a final casting out of sin and exile? Ancient prophecies hint at a day when death shall be no more, Revelation 21 verse 4, and the inhabitants of the sea shall be healed, Isaiah 11 verse 9. Might that healing extend beyond human hearts to the mermaids still bound by Michael's decree? Imagine a world where every boundary, between heaven and earth, flesh and spirit, judgment and mercy, is dissolved in a flood of grace. Could the mermaids then emerge from hidden depths, tails swapped for feet, hearts restored to flesh and bone? As evening deepens into night, the lonely sound of a single oar dipping into water can still awaken that ancient echo. In the hush of coastal darkness, one hears not only the mermaid's call but also the faintest promise of return, the promise that God will restore you from captivity, Psalm 126 verse 1. Could that restoration ripple across every shore, washing away the scars of exile and birthing new life in places long forsaken? Now, as you stand at the water's edge, waves lapping at your feet like whispered secrets, the mermaid's song fades into the wind. You feel the pull of a heart torn between two realms, yearning for both promise and purity. And in that longing, one question remains. If even mermaids conceived in sin can glimpse the dawning light of grace, what hope then stirs in your own soul? Could the final act of this hidden saga be not renewal of water but the rising of new bones, souls reborn from exile's deep with a song that no flood, no curse, no depth can ever silence? Night's velvet drapes the sea in ink-washed silence, broken only by the soft sigh of surf against abandoned jetties. Imagine standing at the prow of a small skiff, lantern in hand, watching phosphorescent ripples writhe like living spirits beneath your keel. Could any shadow feel heavier than the memory of divine judgment echoing through every brine-scented breeze? For the wives of the watchers, now mermaids, this night brings both dread and longing, a final crescendo to an ancient lament. Since the dawn of that hidden aftermath, countless generations have lived and died without knowing their song. Yet prophecy still calls through every surge, "I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you," Ezekiel 36 verse 26. Could those words reach even into watery graves, stirring hope in souls bound by curse? In the stillness, you might glimpse a shape beneath the waves, tail flickering like stained glass, eyes lifted in yearning toward starlight. Here, at the frontier of two worlds, redemption hangs in delicate balance. Historians trace mermaid lore from Babylonian bas-reliefs to Nordic sagas, from Chinese porcelain to West African river spirits. Across continents, the motif repeats, a creature caught between realms, bearing both the beauty and the tragedy of forbidden union. Could these myriad stories reflect fragments of Michael's decree, shards of a truth too vast for any one culture alone? In the tapestry of human myth, each thread glints with the promise of a deeper reality. In the hush before dawn, modern seekers gather on misty beaches, folk singers, poets, occultists, drawn by legends of siren music. They speak of listening circles, of sound walks guided by harmonic frequencies said to mirror mermaid laments. Critics call it pseudoscience, a romantic folly. Yet those who attend emerge pale and breathless, their eyes haunted by echoes. Could the ancient curse be carried in sound waves, encoded in frequencies that vibrate through water and bone alike? Meanwhile, theologians debate the scope of Michael's mercy. Some claim the mermaid's eventual redemption lies in Christ's triumph over sin, the last Adam, restoring what the first rebellion shattered. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 45. Others argue that Michael's judgment points to a broader cosmic order, that love, when severed from obedience, becomes a binding curse until every soul, however fallen, bows in humble repentance. Could grace, like the tide, reach even the furthest reef where the mermaids dwell? In the burgeoning field of eco-theology, scholars see mermaid lore as a cautionary emblem of humanity's breach with creation. The wives of the Watchers, transformed and exiled, mirror our own disrupted kinship with earth and water. Their song warns, when we forsake boundaries set for our flourishing, we doom ourselves to exile from paradise. Yet their lingering hope reminds us that even the deepest rift can be bridged by mercy's current. Artist collectives now stage immersive mermaid rites along threatened shorelines, blending performance art, environmental activism, and ritual lament. Participants wade ankle-deep, singing choruses drawn from ancient lamentations, each note a plea for healing wounded waters. Fishermen and wildlife rescuers join, their nets empty yet hearts full with new purpose. Could these communal acts echo Michael's hidden act, turning judgment into a catalyst for restoration? As dawn's tendrils brush the horizon, the mermaid silhouettes dissolve beneath shifting tides. A single shell, half buried in sand, bears the imprint of scales, no ordinary mollusk's trinket but a relic of a covenant once broken. Hold it close, and you may feel a faint pulse, as if the sea itself remembers a melody of exile and hope. Could that pulse be the promise that even cursed daughters may yet find a way home? In the final hush, the ocean offers one last refrain, a voice that carries both sorrow of separation and the yearning of return. Come, it seems to whisper, to the place where all boundaries fade, where exile gives way to embrace, and where every broken heart learns to sing. And in that call you sense the heartbeat of a promise first spoken before borders, before sin, before the flood, that the God who judges also heals, the God who binds also frees, the God who once sent angels to war now summons every wandering soul to peace. Could the true act of Michael's decree be not only a warning against rebellion but an invitation to mercy's tide? And when we, like the mermaids, stand at the liminal edge of world's despair, might we too hear that timeless promise, dust and breath, ashes and song, exile and return, woven into the eternal soundtrack of grace. Bones shall rise again, the prophet cried, Ezekiel 37 verse 12. Far beneath moonlit waters, even the mermaid's lament holds that refrain. In the hush between wave and wind, might we at last learn to listen, and to believe that no exile is endless when grace begins to sing? As we've sailed through the hidden currents of rebellion and judgment, from angels who fell through Eden's gates to mermaids singing beneath moonlit reefs, we discover a timeless truth. When boundaries set by love are broken, exile follows. Yet even the deepest rifts can be bridged by mercy's tide. Archangel Michael's decree reminds us that justice and grace flow from the same source, and that redemption beckons every wanderer however far they've strayed. Today's practical takeaway comes from the Chua, a Buddhist temple that turns compassion into action. When a single temple mobilizes volunteers to rebuild homes after floods, organize free health clinics for remote villages, and host mindfulness workshops for stressed professionals, it proves that humble service can reshape whole communities. True devotion isn't measured by ritual alone but by the courage to serve and the willingness to heal broken lives. If this journey stirred your heart, let it spark your own wave of change. Like this video to affirm the power of mercy, subscribe for more stories that weave ancient promise with modern purpose, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Then take one bold step. Volunteer at your local temple, offer a meal to a neighbor, or simply lend a listening ear. Your single act of kindness can echo across shores and generations. Right now,